As if the last year of school before college wasn't stressful enough, my dad got himself fired and we had to move to a new city so he could find a new job. It wouldn't have been so bad, except Dad was a teacher at my school, so everyone knew what he'd done. It was one of the worst things to happen to us since Mom died when I was 12, but this time it was all Dad's fault. You see, he was having an affair with the principal's wife, and someone in my grade filmed them and shared it across social media. I could have stayed at this school and finished my exams, but let's be honest, I'd never live it down. I lasted about 3 days before I went to the principal and told him I was leaving. He didn't even look at me. He just said, "You should be ashamed of your dad. Get out of my school." When I was emptying out my locker, one guy came up to me and said that me and my dad were a disgrace, and I shouldn't show my face in this town again. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. So Dad and I packed up and moved, leaving our old life behind. I was miserable at first. The video was still viral, and I even thought about asking Dad if I could change my surname to Mom's old name, just so I wouldn't have to be associated with it all. Dad couldn't find a job anywhere. Everyone recognized him from the video, and some newspapers had written about it too. It was a nightmare. I knew I'd have to start at a new school so I could sit my final exams, so I decided to try and disguise myself. I cut my long hair into a pixie cut and bleached it blonde. Then I got my nose pierced. On the first day, Dad offered to drive me, but I told him I'd walk, just in case anyone recognized him. I knew I was being mean to him, but I didn't care. He'd ruined my reputation, and I wasn't about to let him do it again. As I was walking to school, I wasn't paying attention, and I bumped into a young guy. "Hey, watch it," he said. "I'm blind." I apologized, then looked back at him. Wow, I'd never have known he was blind. And then I got an idea. I reached into my bag and put on my sunglasses, and then when I got closer to this school, I held onto the wall and walked alongside it slowly. I could see people looking at me, but I didn't care. A few people started whispering, and I let go of the wall. What was I even doing? But then a girl came up to me and introduced herself as Elsie and took me by the arm and offered to help me walk to class. She said her brother was blind too, so she knew how difficult it could be sometimes. Well, too late now. I'd started this, so I'd just have to play along. I mean, how hard could it be? I told her I was new around here and this was my first day. She seemed so excited. She started describing things to me, like where the girls' bathroom was, and then she took me to register, and I was so sure the principal would know I was lying. But it seemed this school took disability seriously. For the first time in ages, I felt like people actually cared about me. Elsie was assigned as my guide, and that first morning passed in a blur. When she introduced me to her boyfriend at lunch, I had to stop myself from staring at him. He was such a babe. But then I realized I could stare all I wanted because he obviously thought I couldn't see him. And when Elsie had her back turned, I could see him checking me out, looking me up and down. And from the way his mouth was hanging open, it was clear he thought I looked good. It was like a whole new world had opened up. As soon as people found out I was blind, they did all kinds of things in front of me. One guy was picking his nose, and then when we went to the bathroom, Elsie didn't even close the door. It was pretty awkward, but what could I do? Surely someone would catch me out. And yup, sure enough, in the afternoon, things went downhill. Elsie dropped me off at the classroom for people with special needs, and then she just left me there. I looked around me and realized people there seriously had proper disabilities and learning difficulties. I wanted to scream that I was a fraud and run out, but the teacher came over to me and gave me a hug, and I was reminded why I was doing this. Anything to avoid being the girl whose dad got fired because of an affair. But then she put a book in front of me, and I realized it was Braille, and my heart almost stopped. How was I supposed to know what this book was about? I had no clue how to read it. I had to get out of there. I told her I wasn't feeling very well, and then I reached out to grab onto the chair in front of me so I could feel my way out of the classroom. But I didn't even realize how hard I'd pulled it, or the fact there was someone sitting in it. And the next moment, the chair was falling on top of me, and then a girl fell onto the floor. I just lay there trying not to cry. How had I not seen her sitting there? This whole faking being blind thing was starting to mess with me. Then it got worse. She landed on her arm and broke it. She was actually blind, which made me feel so bad. And no one was even angry with me because they all assumed I couldn't see. The teacher ordered an ambulance for the blind girl and offered to call my parents to pick me up. And I panicked and said my dad was sick and my mom had passed away years ago. The teacher felt so bad for me and said I could rest in her office until the end of the day, and then she'd drive me home. I sat in the teacher's office and waited, and then eventually I decided to leave without her noticing. I left a note thanking her for looking after me. I wrote it with my left hand, of course, so it would look realistic, and then I snuck out. Everyone was in class, so I just walked out of there like normal and headed home. When I got home, Dad was in a good mood. He'd got a job interview and he had a date that night. I just ignored him and went to my room. What a crazy first day! The next day, Elsie was waiting for me at the gate, and I had to pretend I didn't see her and walk straight past her, but she grabbed my hand and helped me to class again. Then my teacher was there to welcome me, and she said she had some exciting news, that seeing as I was 18 and blind, and my dad was sick, I could claim some benefits to help me out. I couldn't believe it! Jackpot! Maybe being blind wasn't so bad after all. That morning I had gym class, which I wasn't expecting. I thought another perk of being blind would be that I got to skip sports and stuff, but no. It was so humiliating. It was a swimming class. The gym teacher gave me a swimsuit and I put it on backwards, thinking that would be more realistic. But our special needs department teacher rolled her eyes at me and said that by now surely I knew how to dress myself. She'd been so nice to me up until now. I didn't get it. I kept watching her and she was constantly looking at her phone. The rest of the day dragged by. Faking being blind was hard work. After school, I decided to go check out the mall. I wore my sunglasses in case anyone from school saw me. Anyway, the mall was pretty lame, so I bought a milkshake and decided to leave. Suddenly, I saw Elsie and her boyfriend, and I panicked. I was playing on my phone, and I was like, that's it, my act is up. They were kissing, so I walked by quickly, hoping they wouldn't see me. And then I realized something. It wasn't Elsie he was kissing. I looked right at him, and he froze and opened his mouth to say something. Then I heard him whisper under his breath, "Never mind, she's blind. Phew." Except I wasn't blind, mister, and you have officially been caught in the act. I walked back around, hid behind the fountain, and quickly snapped a pic of them kissing. Elsie deserved better. I looked her up on Instagram and sent her a private message with the photo. She replied straight away saying, "Who is this? Why are you trying to ruin my relationship?" And then it clicked. My Instagram handle wasn't my name, and my pic looked nothing like me. Oh yeah, and I was blind. Obviously she didn't know it was me. Well, at least she now knew that her boyfriend was a lying, cheating. Over the next few days, Elsie didn't come to school, and I regretted sending her that photo. If she found out it had been me who sent it, I'd probably have lost my only friend. I could see her boyfriend looking at me in a horrible way, but I just kept my head down. She must have told him someone had seen him that day. Was he on to me? He definitely was, because on Friday afternoon, I saw him going into my locker and taking my phone. It took all my strength not to jump out at him and stop him, but it was too late. He had taken it. I hurried home wondering what I could do. He'd see all the photos and figure out I'd been faking it. I could report my phone missing, but I had no proof that it was him that had done it. I couldn't exactly say I'd seen him. I just wanted to get home to try and figure out what I'd do next. Except that was not what happened. My dad had invited his date over, and as soon as I walked through the door, he told me to get changed and come join him in the kitchen. Great, just what I needed. I was chopping carrots when she arrived. I turned around as my dad introduced her. "Allison, sweetie, come meet my new girlfriend, Susan." I literally just missed my foot. I dropped the knife right out of my hand and stared in shock. "Oh no, Allison, are you okay? Wow, what a coincidence. You shouldn't be using sharp knives. Come on, Kevin, surely you know better than that," she said. "Hang on, you two know each other?" my dad said. "Why, yes, of course. I'm Allison's teacher. Why didn't you mention your daughter was blind? I had no idea you were her father. In fact, she told me her father was sick." I stood there, my skin burning with shame. I had to run. This was my absolute worst nightmare. "Allison!" my dad screamed, and that was how I got caught. I'd faked being blind because I just wanted people to like me and not associate me with my dad's mistakes. And now I'd gone and messed up everything, including my dad's new relationship. Susan, my teacher, was so upset with me and said I was a huge disappointment and that she didn't want to be with a man who'd raised a daughter like me. I guess I was just as bad as my dad, like father, like daughter. I wish I could say it all blew over after that and that I went back to school the following Monday and started afresh. Nope, life doesn't work like that. I was expelled, of course, and that Monday after school, there was a knock at the door. Elsie was standing there and I held my breath, assuming she was about to go crazy at me. But instead, she just handed me my phone. She said she'd been angry to find out I'd been lying about being blind, especially as her brother was blind, and it wasn't okay to joke about this kind of thing. But then she said I'd saved her from dating a cheater, and she was so grateful. I was shocked. That was not how I expected her to react. She said she'd broken up with her boyfriend and that he'd been suspended for stealing. "So, you still want to be my friend?" I asked her. And she did! I couldn't believe it. Sure, I could have saved myself a whole lot of trouble if I hadn't faked being blind, but then would I have discovered that Elsie's ex was bad news? And would Elsie have befriended me in the first place? There were just two small problems. I had to finish school, and I had to find a way to help my dad. He was so depressed about Susan breaking up with him. I plucked up the courage and called Susan and asked if she would meet me so we could chat. She agreed, and when we met, I told her I'd really messed up, but I'd only done it because of what had happened at my last school. I told her my dad had made some stupid choices in the past, and I had too, but he really liked her and deserved a second chance. I said I'd do anything to make it up to her, and begged her to ask the school to let me come back. Well, not only did they let me come back and finish my last year, they even hired my dad. Him and Susan are together now, and Elsie is my best friend. We're even going to the same college. And I've actually been learning Braille for reals. Part of the deal of finishing school was that I volunteered to help the kids with learning difficulties. I mean, it's the least I could do, right? I won't ever fake anything again. And guess what? People actually forget stuff. My dad's affair at my old school is old news now, and so is my whole faking being blind thing. Here's to a more honest future.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I'd like to share a story with you that really affected my life. I used to hate school. I didn't get very good grades, and I didn't have many friends. My family didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't afford the kinds of clothes the other girls wore, or birthday parties at the skating rink, or a membership to the pool. My mom used to dress me in horrible thrift store outfits, plaid skirts, frumpy blouses, stretch pants with stirrups. You get the picture. I figured that was the reason people didn't seem to like me. If I could just get rich and buy the right clothes and go to the right places, I'd be popular, and boys would flock to me. It seemed really unfair that I couldn't have these things, so I became bitter. I resented my parents for not having money, and as a result, I was nasty to them. I started making fun of other kids who wore thrift store clothes, kids whose families had even less money than mine. I thought that would make me feel better, but it really didn't. Then this girl named Kelsey, who let me hang out with her sometimes, offered me some of her hand-me-down clothes. They were really nice, lots of popular brands, and they fit me perfectly. I would have rather had my own new clothes, but I thought wearing Kelsey's stuff would at least help me look like less of a loser. But even in the right clothes, people still ignored me, or laughed at me. I looked in the mirror one day and realized the truth, that I just wasn't pretty. My nose was too big, and my braces were ugly, and my hair was too stringy. I became obsessed with my looks. Every day I would stare in the mirror, thinking about all the things that were wrong with my appearance. Thinking that if I would just magically get prettier, everything would change. But no matter how much makeup I put on, or how I did my hair, I didn't have big blue eyes like Kaylin, or gorgeous black curls like Samantha, or a perfect body like Becky. I just looked like me. I started to hate myself. And the more I hated myself, the more I tried to turn that hatred on other people. The hottest guys at school completely ignored me, but there were a couple of nice guys who weren't very handsome who tried to talk to me sometimes. But instead of accepting their invitations to go out or be their date to a dance, I would turn them down, Then I'd snicker to the few friends I did have about how the guys were only 5s or 6s out of 10, and how pathetic it was that they thought they had a chance with me. I wanted a hot boyfriend, someone who would make other girls jealous. Then I met Matt. He was average looking, and at first I wanted nothing to do with him, but my friend Chelsea urged me to give him a chance. The more I hung out with him, the more I realized how amazing he was. He was smart and funny, and most importantly, he was kind. I started to feel bad for how I treated him and other average-looking guys. Talking to Matt made me realize that he felt the same way I did. Insecure about his looks, afraid that girls wouldn't like him. But he said he'd started to change his self-image by focusing on the things about himself that he did like. For instance, he could make people laugh. He was a good musician. He was good at taking care of his younger siblings. All of these were things he liked about himself. I tried to start focusing on things I liked about myself. It was tough at first, but then I started to get the hang of it. I might not have the best grades, but I was good at art. I had creative ideas. Matt helped by telling me the good things he saw in me. He said I was also funny. I was a good dancer. I was smart. I realized that there are way more important things about me than how I look, and that I should never have judged other people for their looks, especially since I knew how bad it felt to have others do that to me. I decided that going forward, I would focus on the good I saw inside of people, not their appearances. Matt and I have been dating for a year now, and we're incredibly happy together. He's beautiful to me in every way, and I'm beautiful to him. I have a lot more friends now, too. Not the prettiest, most popular girls, but girls who are smart and ambitious. Anytime someone makes a cruel comment about us, we just laugh it off. It still hurts, but it's easier to ignore once you see that superficiality gets you nowhere. I've apologized to my parents, too, for letting my obsession with looks affect my relationships with the most important people in my life, my family. Looks aren't forever, but kindness is. And the things you do in the world are more important than your clothes or hair or makeup will ever be.